Can you explain the legislative processes? I've been having a lot of reps on the show, and then when they pass a bill, it gets to the Senate. Can you just kind of give us a quick
Legislature 101?
Yes.
Yeah, I can give you. Yeah, let me give you Legislature 101 because it's interesting because you'll go to when you go to high school, actually you go to middle school, you'll get a class on government and civics, and then you go to high school and they give you the local government class, so on and so forth, and then but then there's the real thing that happens. Okay, in the legislature, basically, especially on the Senate side or in the House side, what transpires is that you come to session and you really file three types of bills. For example, if I have an idea that's to try and improve government or cut government, then I file a bill and it's sponsored, with my name on it. And then the second thing is you can actually sponsor bills for constituents. So you'll see some bills that are out there that'll say sponsored by Senator Boquist on behalf of Veronica, right, or on behalf of an association or behalf of somebody else that's out there. And so that's the differentials in bills. Once the bills are introduced, from then on, the only vote that really counts in the Senate or in the House is the very first vote you make. And that's the single most important vote, and that's the vote that determines what happens to your bills. And the reason that is the first vote in the Senate that happens is you vote for the President of the Senate. And the Democrats control the majority, and so a Democrat was elected to the President of the Senate, Senator Courtney. What happens from all your bills that come in is every bill that's introduced goes to Senator Courtney, and Senator Courtney then determines what committee that bill is going to go to. For example, if it's a bill relating to revenue or taxes or cutting taxes, and for example, they want that bill to pass, they may send that bill to the Revenue Committee, so it's worked by the Revenue Committee. If they don't want your bill to pass, this is one person making the decision, they'll send it to the Rules Committee, and your bill's dead. Nothing's happened. The second step that happens is even if it was sent to Rules Committee or whatever committee it was sent to, the committee chair, which the president appoints the committee chairs, generally of the same party. So if you got a Democrat president, you have a Democrat committee chair. That Democrat is the sole decider on whether or not you get a public hearing. So if he doesn't like your bill, he or she doesn't like your bill, they don't like you, or they don't want the minority bill to pass, you don't even get a public hearing. This session, it was unique in the House because it was 30-30 tie over there, and so a lot more bills got hearings. Ironically, in the Senate this time, a lot more bills got hearings because the Senate president's position was that you should try and hear all the bills, whether they're Democrat or Republican. He didn't put out what I want you to move, but if you were in a committee, like I chaired Veterans and Military Affairs, and the direction was hear all the bills. Doesn't matter, make the determination of what bills should move, but have a public hearing. Once you have a public hearing, then you have a work session in the Senate, and the work session is when you pass the bill to the floor. In the past, generally, it's been pretty much guaranteed because there's been a supermajority of one of the other parties, and of course, for the last multiple years, it's been a Democrat supermajority in the Senate. And so what's happened is if a Democrat bill passes out, it's automatically going to pass across the floor. Well, we've whittled it down in the Senate to it's a 14-16, and so ironically, I think we've had a half dozen bills die on the floor, where the Democrats thought they had enough votes to get her out, and a Democrat jumped ship, and the bill died on the floor. Which is kind of, in fact, that happened today. There's a bill that went across the floor today on flower trade, and it went across the floor and it actually died. In fact, two of us were sitting in the back saying, well, I hope the carrier of their bill only says about 2 lines, because the more they talk, the more they're going to lose votes. And exactly what happened. The more they talked, they lost the votes, the bill died on the floor, they moved to reconsider the bill, and I guess we'll see it again tomorrow. But then once it's passed the entire Senate, it starts completely over in the House of Representatives. So it's got to go through, get introduced, go to the Speaker or the President, be assigned to a committee that might actually hear it, then have a work session in the committee, then come to the floor and pass, and then it starts 100% over again in the opposite chamber. And we've had bills literally come from the House to the Senate with 60-0. That's the vote, and they've not even gotten hearings in the Senate. And the Senate sent bills over that are 30-0 to the House, and they've not even got a hearing over there.
Now, I thought bills started in the House and then went to the Senate, was voted on the Senate.
No. Only revenue bills. Tax bills that raise taxes are supposed to start in the House. Now, there's a convoluted legal interpretation around this building. You would think that if you had to pay a fee or you went to DMV and paid something, that would be a revenue generator, but that's not true. If it's a revenue bill, it means it's a tax bill like income tax or corporate tax, right, it must start in the House and come over to the Senate. But any other bill can start any place. So if they want to do a fee increase, or today they had a bill where they raised utility rates 35 cents on every utility customer in PGE and in Pacific Power to create a fund to help individuals who couldn't pay their power bill. And it's got a 2-year sunset clause on it, so you step back and look at, I guess, the Good Samaritan thing and say, well, is it worth paying 35 cents, more for 2 years so that people that are out of work or elderly people who can't pay their power bill get a little subsidy or some sort of help for a 2-year period. However, the bill was written so it collected twice as much money than was needed for the program. So they wanted $5 million for the program, but it actually collected $100 million, and of course the rest of us are going, oh, wait a minute. You mean, wait, if this is a humanitarian thing and this is to help, people with their power bills that are struggling, then you pass a program that provides the money to help with that. You don't pass a program that costs twice as much and you use the money elsewhere.
Isn't that the game they always play?
That's the game they always play. And so the argument came up in the Senate today is like, wait a minute, this is a revenue bill because it's generating more revenue than is actually set for a fee. And so we had this little legal battle on the floor, and of course then it came back. The lawyers came in because the lawyers work for the majority, right? It's real democracy. And said, oh, no, it's okay. And so they ended up passing the bill across the floor. And it went, of course, it's over in the House. The House is again, tied 30-30. And I say that's a Winchester round. That's not a vote.
Well, when I look at my bills, I see fees and taxes, and they come up with some interesting names. And it's, $1.51. And they just nickel and dime you, and they seem to do it deceptively. They don't have like one tax.
No, you're right.
There's like 5.
No, there's 5. Well, it's interesting you say that because in the last biennium, the other funds budget, which is those fees, that's all they're made up is fees, is about $28 billion. Your taxes, corporate and personal taxes, is only $14 billion in revenue, but they raised $28 billion in these other fees. And of course, what we're finding is with the economy being stagnant and unemployment being high and businesses being overregulated, what's transpiring right now is that those fees aren't coming in because businesses just are failing.
Yeah.
And so there's no businesses there to pay, and so the fee amounts are going down. So it's kind of ironic that even though there's $1 billion more in tax money coming in, the overall budget for this biennium has been $62 billion. The next budget's going to be between 52 and 55. It's actually going to probably drop $10 billion because there's not the federal funds coming in and these fees aren't coming in. And for once, pretty much bipartisan now, this is a strange thing in this building, there are almost no fee increases happening.